Life coaching. I'll bet you know someone who's training to be or already is a life coach, or at least you know someone who's being coached. It is, according to the Harvard Business Review, a $1 billion a year industry. Welcome to Insights. I'm Dick Goldberg, and today we'll learn what life coaching is, how it's different from counseling and therapy, and hopefully in listening, you'll learn when and if it might be helpful for you. My guest today, Darcy Luoma. Darcy has been a life coach for 12 years, and she is a lead instructor at the University of Wisconsin's Extension 9-month course leading to a professional life coach certificate, which, by the way, costs about $8,500. This is the only program in the Midwest that's accredited by the International Coaching Federation, the industry's biggest accrediting organization, and from my research, the name that you want to be involved with. Darcy, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Dick.
Obviously, the first question is, what is life coaching?
Great way to start. Life coaching, if you think about a coach and a carriage, the metaphor from decades ago, a coach literally in a carriage was taking someone from where they were to where they wanted to get to. Want to get to town, want to get to the farm. Coaching in a similar way, it metaphorically and literally is the same thing. It takes you from where you are in your life now to where you want to get to. And that where you want to get to is defined by the person who is being coached, whether it's greater fulfillment, it might be professional, it might be personal, it might be health or wellness, that they're looking for some kind of a future that's different than their current.
Well, now you're assuming people know where they want to go.
Sometimes they don't.
Well, now wait a minute. Anyone who's listening, tell us, think in your brain, where do you want to go? What is your goals? What's your future? How many people have the answer? Of those listening, what percentage would be able to answer that intelligently?
Well, let's see. I'm going to answer that question and tell me if this answers it. When people come into coaching relationship and say, I'm looking for a coach, usually it's one of two things that they're looking for. One is they're clear on where they want to go. Okay. They just don't know how to do it. They're overwhelmed or they don't know where to start. The other place that people come to coaching is they know, I hear this a lot, I've got a good job, I have a nice husband, I have a nice house, a good family, but I'm just not happy. I'm just not fulfilled. But I don't know what's not right. So they don't necessarily know where they want to go. They've just hit sort of a pain point that they're no longer willing to tolerate.
Now, how is this coaching rather than therapy? If they come in with that second issue.
Yeah. Good question. Coaching is different from therapy in a couple of key ways. And I'm going to overly simplify it, and feel free if you want me to go deeper. But essentially in therapy, and I'm a big fan, I've had plenty of therapists in my life and counselors, it's looking more at healing or recovering from something in the past so that you can get to a functional life. Coaching is really looking at your future and where you want to go to get to a fulfilled life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The second thing that's really a key distinction in coaching and therapy is there is an assumption and a core belief in coaching that the person is innately capable, creative, and competent. And in therapy, that's not necessarily always the case.
May I stop you?
Yes.
Why do you say that? Every person is innately... So those three things again?
Capable, creative, and competent.
Well, wait a minute. That doesn't fit with my reality. I don't think everyone's competent.
And they aren't necessarily. And when you look at therapy, there might be PTSD, there might be depression, there might be bipolar, there might be some other kind of anxiety or something. When you're coming into a coaching relationship, you're really assuming that person is, I'll use another term, naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. Whereas in therapy, that may not be the starting point.
I hate to be annoying here, but a lot of people aren't. What do you do if they're not? But they're coming to you.
And if they're not, from what perspective?
Okay. Creative, competent, most of their... I'm sorry.
And capable.
Capable. What if they're not creative? Is everyone creative?
I don't know that everyone necessarily thinks they're creative. I think creativity can be defined in a number of different ways.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's this notion in coaching that the person is the expert in their own life.
Oh, okay.
And that they know what's going to bring them the greatest happiness and the greatest fulfillment.
I'm really getting off subject.
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay, but I have read in books on happiness, and like the book Stumbling on Happiness, I think by Dan Gilbert, he says people don't know what's good for them. And they set goals, but they really don't know themselves well enough to know what goal is going to make them happy. So you're assuming when people come to you, they know what's good for them.
They do know what's good for them. They don't always know they know.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Okay?
Okay.
So in coaching, there's this two-part equation. Part of the value of coaching is you're creating that awareness. You're helping someone identify, what do I love? What is important to me? What's getting in the way? Where do I get stuck? Because it's not always conscious. And then the second part of the equation is once they have some new awareness and they've deepened the learning, then you help them create some goals and accountability and forward momentum. And that's another key distinction with coaching, is that there's always forward actions and progress and accountability and next steps.
Well, okay, so a client walks in your door.
Yeah.
Do you feel more excited if they say, I don't really know what I need to make myself happier? Or versus someone who comes in, my goal is to be executive vice president in the next 4 years, and they have very clear goals. Which is more fun to work with?
For me, it's not necessarily, that's not necessarily the measure of, the measure is more, is their chemistry in terms of whether they know or don't know. Is this the right, is my energy up? Is there good chemistry between me and this person? And I'm not everybody's best coach. And that's why when someone says, well, how do I find a coach? I always say, try on a couple, because you'll get a different feel, and all coaches have a different style. Just like doctors have a different style, and dentists and, plumbers, they have a different, some are extroverted, some are introverted. You need to find one that has the right chemistry, both ways.
You seem like a coach. You just are full of enthusiasm.
I love what I do.
Yeah.
I really do.
But I bet in your previous work you've been enthusiastic too.
Yes, I have been enthusiastic, and I've come from sort of a nonprofit government sector world. And when I was changing directions, I hired a life coach. And I said, okay, so I've come from government. I'm assuming that since my senator's done, I'm going to work for the next senator. And she worked with me, holding me as the expert, saying, well, what's your passion and what do you love? And I said, well, gosh, what I love coaching, but I can't possibly do that. And she coached me to help me identify, because I didn't have that awareness.
Did you use that word? Did you say I love coaching?
Good question. I think at that point I knew I loved coaching. Before I knew I loved coaching, I knew I loved helping people figure out where they want to go. And I've always had people coming to me looking for a sounding board and new perspectives and creative solutions. When I figured out that coaching does that, oh my gosh, I was thrilled, and it opened up so much potential in terms of my profession.
Who wouldn't want to go to you, since you're a big shot in the field and you seem just the right personality for it? Who would you be wrong for as a client?
Probably a couple of things. One, if someone is coming in and they're saying, tell me what to do. Tell me, here's what I want. Tell me how to do that and how to get there. In coaching, it's really much more about exploration and holding that person as the expert and helping them identify what those steps are that are going to best support them. So that might be a case where they really want a consultant, or really they need a mentor, someone who is going to say, yep, I've been there before. I've done this. Let me tell you. Right. That might be a type of person who would not be a good fit, I would say.
How big is this business? How many coaches are there? How much money is involved?
Yeah.
Give us some idea of scope.
So the International, I did a little research knowing I was going to be talking with you. The International Coach Federation, as you talked about in your introduction, is really the primary professional organization for coaches. They did a study and they said there's 47,500 professional coaches worldwide. And of those, just under a third are credentialed.
Really?
Yeah.
That's shocking.
Which part?
The third. I would think you were going to say 99% are credentialed.
No.
Wow. We're toward the end of the program before we get to this, but let's get to it now.
Yes.
How do you safeguard yourself if you're going to pick out a coach? Wouldn't you want them credentialed?
So I'm admittedly biased. I've designed a credentialed program for the university, and I have a number of credentials myself, and I truly believe in getting trained and having that official certification. Now, having said that, you, Dick, tomorrow could create a website and launch and say, I'm a life coach. So anybody, there is no professional standard or licensing that has to happen to become a coach. Now, the ICF did a study in 2014, and what they found out is that people who hire certified coaches are happier with the results. than people who hire those who don't have training and certification.
How much happier? Like 1% happier or big happier?
You know what? In this big, huge, thick report I have here of 32 pages, it tells you that, but I didn't memorize what their study said. It just said that they're happier. Yeah.
Okay. I wonder, the best way to introduce people to this subject might be examples. Might be if you could tell us, without breaching confidentiality, examples of cases of how you've helped people.
Yes.
Both the people trying to figure out what they need to be happy and people who have clear goals and you help them achieve those.
Yes, absolutely. There are so many examples. Let's see here. I'll draw from one. I had a woman that came to me for coaching saying that she was feeling like she sort of was stalling out professionally and was maybe under-challenged and really had a primary focus area of dealing with her professional identity. And she came into the coaching, and we started to work towards that. Now, coaching, I use a very holistic process, and so the whole person, in other words, you don't exist in a vacuum, and so you might go to work and be happy and then leave and not have a happy marriage or not be healthy or good, strong relationships or spirituality, whatever is important to you. And so in the coaching, she had this new awareness that her lack of fulfillment and her flatness in her life really had to do with all sorts of other things about her relationships, and both with her fiance at this point and with her parents and with her sister, that were really holding her down and pulling her back. And she had no idea. Here she's thinking it's completely work that's not fitting. And so we started to look at some of these other parts of her life. And she started to show up differently in those relationships intentionally. She set action change.
What did you help her change?
Yeah, she realized that in those relationships, she was really. I'm going to use some terms that feel free to ask if they don't make sense, but she was very, very codependent. Yeah. And she was very much
always helping.
Yes, always helping and sort of the victim, and didn't have her own voice, and didn't have an ability to sort of say, here's what I love or here's what I want. And she was getting drowned out in those relationships from finding any joy. And here she thought it was really tied to her professional. Yeah. Now, of course, that was a pattern and a theme that showed up in all sorts of places, also in the professional world, but what awareness she had was how much that showed up in other places that was really a blind spot for her.
Wow. That sounds a little like on the edge of therapy. This is a personality pattern that you're helping change.
And what's different here is, so you're creating awareness, and if you're in therapy, you might go back and say, well, what happened when you were younger that had you feel this way? And you might explore your feelings and what. Yeah. In coaching, we're not going to go back and dig deeper to the history. We're going to say, so there's something that's happened in your life that's made you who you are today. What's the impact, and how does this affect your happiness, your relationships, your job, whatever it might be? And how do you want it to be different in the future? So there's really do you see that distinction? Yes. Yeah, so there's really a focus on who you are today, here and now, and the future.
Yeah. Okay. And how long does this take? Is this a multi-year process or 2 visits? Or
it really varies. So I did my master's thesis on life coaching, and when I did that literature review, it said that really between 3 and 6 months is what is the ideal amount of time for someone to make long-term sustainable results in coaching. Now, having said that, there's no magic. Sometimes I have some clients who have been with me a lot longer than that. I have others that come in, and after a couple of months, they're like, wow, I have clarity, I have an action plan, I'm ready to go. But that's pretty much what the research shows, is it's somewhere between 3 and 6 months.
How long was your experience as a coachee?
As a coachee with my coach, you mean?
Yes.
So I've had numerous coaches. I think I'm on my 4th or 5th coach right now.
Are you still being coached?
Yes, of course.
Why do you say of course?
Oh, because I believe in it. It works. It helps me.
How do you respond to the person who says you're a coachee junkie?
I wouldn't say I'm a coachee junkie. So what I've had, my pattern over the last decade or so has been that I'll have, when I'm at a place where I'm sort of feeling stuck or I'm trying to figure out what's not working, I'll reach out and I'll hire a coach. Wow. So I did that many, many, many years ago, and that helped me realize I needed to go and get some more education, that I was really holding myself back. I did it as the example I gave previously when I was ending my political career. Yeah. That coach, that was more about envisioning where I wanted to go. Sure. I now have a business coach who helps me be really really intentional, my business is, I'm thrilled. It's booming. It's abundant. And I'm working with my coach now to figure out how to have balance.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So that I'm not just, I'm thrilled to have such great, so many clients and such great work. But I also want to have time for me as a mom and as a wife and for my fitness and to have a little white space. So my coach is helping me with that.
Wow. Can I ask you how much you charge for coaching?
Coaching, I'll tell you what the standard industry rate. Well, I don't even know if I shouldn't even say there's a standard, because I'd say some of the students that are in the UW-Madison program, when they're starting out, they might be charging $10 or $25 a session.
And a session's how long?
It depends. It varies, but I would say probably between 30 and 60 minutes is a general length for a session. Mm-hmm. Most coaching is done by phone. I found that fascinating when I was first studying the business. All the way up to, there are coaches, this is certainly on the extreme, but professional athletes who will charge $10,000 for coaching sessions. Wow. I'd say probably the average is, and this is not based on research, this is based on sort of my being very networked in this field, is anywhere from probably 300 to 1,000 or 1,500 per month.
Per month?
Yep.
Okay, and how many sessions are in that month?
And then different coaches structure it differently, but usually between 2 and 4 sessions a month. So some coaches do every other week, some coaches do 3 sessions a month, some do weekly.
That sounds more expensive than psychotherapy.
I don't know what psychotherapy costs.
You're saying, how much is that a session if it's an average of $600 a month and it's...
Yeah, so it's about 3, So I pay my coach $500 a month right now, for instance.
You do? Mm-hmm. And how many times do you...
Twice a month for 45 minutes.
So that's $250 a session.
Yeah, and it's worth every penny.
Wow.
Yeah.
This sounds more lucrative than being a psychotherapist.
It could.
If you're good, if you're successful.
If you're successful, it could. Again, I don't know what comparison.
I do.
But
and I think typically, wild guess.
Yeah.
From insurance companies and all that, they might average $115 a session for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So the top coaches make a lot more.
Yeah, and I think you make a good distinction that it's those top coaches, that it's once you've gotten to that level that, there's money to be made.
Wow. How about success rates? Do you have any idea measurable success rates in the industry with clients, happy clients? What percentage of people feel this really helped me?
There probably are success rates in this ICF study from 2014, but rather than look through, and that's available on the website of the ICF, which is coachfederation.org, in case anybody's interested.
Okay. Coachfederation.org.
Yes.
Okay.
So rather than fiddle through this and try to find the actual statistics, I'll maybe speak to what my experience has been. And when I did my master's thesis, one of the things I did is I took 100 former U.S. Senate interns, which happened to be the world I was living in, and I randomly selected 10, and I coached them for 3 months. And I hired a university professor to do the statistics and analysis, and I remember the day he called me, and he said, "Wow, this works. You need to publish this. You need to do whatever it is." He said, it is so profound, regardless of where those clients started in terms of self-awareness or happiness or fulfillment or goal setting or whatever it might be. After 3 months of coaching, unequivocally, they had greater awareness, greater satisfaction, greater goal achievement than the control group who didn't.
This was your client.
This was, yes.
10 of your clients.
Exactly.
Well, maybe that just means you're really good at this. But that 9 out of 10 coaches, who knows? Maybe they're not. Maybe not you.
And it could, and I think it's like in the industry. Again, you've got legislators, you've got really, really good ones who are popular, who are great, and you've got others that they're one and done, one term, and they aren't reelected. Yeah. So I think within the industry, you have people who are really good and flourish, and those who maybe don't survive.
Am I hearing underneath this, everyone would benefit from coaching?
I would like to think everyone would benefit from coaching. I'm not sure that everyone would, though. I'm not sure that everyone would be at a place to be ready to have the conversations that you have in coaching. I mean, it's a real rich, deep, to be able to create awareness and talk about where do you get stuck and what's hard.
But I would suggest everyone could. Here's my thesis.
Yeah.
The client comes to you, they're pushed in by their spouse or their mother or whatever, And I don't know why I'm here, lady. And you say, okay, is your life great? Are you real happy? Oh, you're perfectly happy? Okay, we're done. But how many people is that? And then you say, well, what's not great?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be? I mean, then mind
sure.
that.
Yes, and the only thing I'm gonna offer, Dick, is a little bit of a distinction on the premise that if someone comes to me, and I've had this all often, where I had a dad here call me and say, I want you to coach my son. He's at the university, and I said, I'm happy to talk with him, but here's the deal: your son has to want to be coached. Right. And so I'll go meet with them. I met with the son. We had a Coke, and at the end, it was so clear he just didn't want this, and so. I said, I called his dad back and I said, save your money. It's not the right investment. Your son will not get great value because it's not where he wants to be. Well, ironically, about 3 months later, the dad called back and he said, all right, fine, Darcy. And I said, excuse me? He said, I realize I'm the one that needs coaching, not him. And so we coached together. That was about a year, and he had tremendous new awareness about his role as a father and caretaking and all sorts of things that came out of that. So yes, I do think everybody would benefit from coaching if they want to be there.
How do you know when what you really need is a psychotherapist versus what you really need is a coach?
Yeah, that's probably not an easy answer. I think, and there are times when I'm working with a client where we kind of keep circling around and coming back to an issue, and we will explore together. I wonder if counseling or therapy might be valuable because there's some healing and recovery and processing that needs to happen. And so I have had clients who have had, that's part of the value and the awareness of coaching, that gosh, I really need to go and get some therapy and process and heal and recover from this.
Is that part of your training program that you offer to tell coaches this is when you refer to a
to help them understand? Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not always clear, right? Because sometimes people are sometimes they don't want to be vulnerable, and they don't want to, there's some shame or there's something, and so they might put up a little bit of a wall, like everything's fine, everything. And so it's like, again, it's like when you keep noticing something keeps coming back and they're not making any forward progress or momentum. That's oftentimes an opportunity to really explore whether therapy.
Okay. Well, let's say someone comes to you and they really are clinically depressed.
Yes.
Can you still ignore the depression but work on their goals and hope that the end result is they're happier even though they haven't dealt with depression?
I would say no.
Wow. Well, I would think that'd be confusing, because I would think you get a lot of people who feel, I want a life coach because I'm unhappy.
If they're clinically depressed, and that's the piece that you started this scenario with. I do have some clients who have depression or anxiety or some other things, and they're working with the therapist at the same time as working with me.
That's interesting.
And they love that combination, because the nature of the conversation when they're with me as their coach is different than the conversation when they're with their psychotherapist. Okay. And that combination for some of my clients really works well, and it supplements sort of their learning, and they can make some forward progress and then go to their therapy and really dig deep and explore what got them to this place.
Is your work really all about goal setting and goals?
That is one half of the equation. And the reason I say it's half of the equation is because the other half is creating awareness. So if you came in, and so what happens oftentimes, Dick, if you go and call a friend and say, I want to go have coffee, and you say, gosh, I'm kind of stuck. I don't know, fill in the blank. I don't know if I should stay in this job. I don't know if I should stay in this marriage, whatever it might be. Most times, and tell me if you disagree, the friend, the spouse, the colleague would start to brainstorm and start to say, well, you know what you should do? You should do it. Here's what I did. And they would jump right to sort of fixing and solving and goal setting. In coaching, that is, you only get to that goal setting and fixing or goal setting and sort of progress once you've got greater awareness around what's creating your reality. What is it that you want? So that deepening the learning, that creating awareness is an absolutely essential part of the equation.
So you ask the client what they think.
Yes.
You try to get them to, but that's true in therapy too. You don't want to just tell the client what he needs to change or she.
Sure.
You want to explore with them what's going on.
Yep. And once they, usually in a coaching session, they're going to have some awareness and some shift, saying, oh, Here's whatever it is, fill in the blank. At that point, when they've got some new awareness, then you say, so given this awareness, what do you want to do over these next 2 weeks? What's your action step? Sometimes the action is very much focused on the doing. I'm going to do 5 informational interviews, or I'm going to tell my boss I'm going to quit, or fill in the blank. Yeah. Sometimes the action is more on the being and the awareness. And it's a powerful question. It's an inquiry. Where am I holding back in my life? Where do I not have my full voice heard? And it's something where they're taking that and saying, wow, I need to really think about this. It's a question that's kind of so big they can't answer it in the moment. And then when you come back, again, I'm using this hypothetical example of 2 weeks later, they've got some new awareness. One of the things that the research shows in coaching is that 90% of the value of coaching happens in between, happens after you've had the conversation. And
between sessions.
Between sessions, exactly, right.
Isn't that because it's pretty action-oriented? You say, well, between sessions, here's your homework, or here's something.
Yes, right, because there's always an intentional focus on what are you going to do with this?
Yes.
Again, sometimes it's on the doing, sometimes it's on the being, but there's always an intentional movement and forward momentum.
Yeah, to me, as I listen, I'm a little bit of a headache with this fuzzy line.
Okay.
Because, I'm a therapist, and I might have action for the client, or reframing what they're thinking, or helping with distorted thinking, or whatever. I don't go back to their childhood all the time and work on that.
Sure.
And there might be homework. I think very often homework is very helpful to move therapy quicker. So there's this, it seems like the lines are thin in some ways between some of this insight coaching. Not the goal-setting part, but the insight part.
Yes, yeah.
So along that line, I'm noticing and seeing that there are MSWs and PhD clinical psychologists becoming coaches.
Yes. And you just, where I was just thinking as you're talking, there really are. There's more counselors, there's more financial advisors, there's social workers who are bringing in coaching. And at the UW-Madison program that we have, I would say so we're in our second year right now, and I would say about half of the students are there because they're wanting to bring in coaching into their life in a formal way. Either expand their practice, saying and my therapist, who I've seen a long time, she went and got a coaching certification, and now she does coaching and counseling therapy. About the other half of the students are looking to bring coaching skills into their current world and to be more effective in their role as a manager, as a boss, as a athletic trainer. But not to hang it. Exactly, right. So you don't need to necessarily say, I'm going to quit my job and become a full-time coach in order to have value from going through a training program.
What are the biggest criticisms that you hear about the field of coaching? The skeptics.
I would say, let me think about this.
If you're stuck, I can throw out one.
Yeah, please.
Okay. What can you learn in a 9-month certificate program compared to someone who's got a PhD in clinical psychology and has had the internship and whatever? And aren't you going to get yourself in trouble when you don't know what you're dealing with and there's some real pathology?
So you're speaking specifically to the training part of it?
Yeah. That you're not equipped to deal. I mean, if it's straightforward goal setting and what do you want out of life, but you might be dealing with people with serious pathology and not pick that up or know what you're doing with them or whatever. I'm not saying this is true, but I'm saying how do you respond to that?
And that's, I think, it goes back to when you asked earlier, about the value of getting certified. To me, our program is 150 hours. Now, you can also go online and get an 8-hour coaching certification and say, I'm certified. You're not going to get that level of depth and the distinction to understand how to know how to respond when someone comes in with that type of pathology.
Okay. So you're saying with the right training,
yes,
you'll know when to refer to someone who's going to do clinical work.
Yep.
Okay. And who would be a good coach? Who should consider this as a career?
Interesting you say that. I had somebody call me a couple of weeks ago interested in the UW program and saying, gosh, I think I want to become a coach, and I'm exploring different coach training schools, and can you tell me a little bit more about it? And so I started to share with him that in coaching, you really hold the client as the expert, and you're asking powerful questions, and you're listening actively. And he said, thank goodness I asked you. He's like, I don't want that. I want to tell people what to do. I want to be able to, right, use my, because I've had 30 years in business and I know. And I said, well, okay, so let's explore some other ways that and other careers or options that might be valuable for you, looking at consulting or some other venue. So I think in coaching, it's someone who is naturally curious, who, and this might be something that you come in with, or if not, it's something that we train in our program. Someone who can really be, is self-aware and can self-manage. Because all the time I have clients who are bringing me problems that I deal with on my own, and it's not my place to say, oh, I've had that problem too, let me tell you. It's a lot of self-managing and saying, so what do you notice? What are your patterns when this happens? And what gets in the way? And what's hard about this? And then I go on my next coaching session with my coach and say, hey, I got some things I got to work through, right?
There you go.
So I think that's part of it too.
And finally, advice to the consumer, how to shop for a coach.
Yeah. Probably there's lots of ways. I think number one is word of mouth referral. I think that, if you know somebody who has worked with a coach and they got great results, find out who it was. I think, and that's sort of the number one way. Secondarily, if you don't have that, the International Coach Federation has a website, and they have listed all of the coaches, and you can actually go in and put in, do you want a male, a female, do you want some in the U.S. or Australia, do they have to be English speaking, do you want them to be
or Toledo
certified?
Or L.A. or Detroit, you can put in the state.
Yep, exactly. And do you want a business coach focus or health and wellness? And then it'll spit out the results of coaches that you can then call. And then I always tell people, most coaches will do a free sample session so that you can see, is there good chemistry? So pick a few and set up some sessions and see if they're the right fit for you.
Well, Darcy Luoma, I thank you very much. I feel like I know a lot more about coaching.
Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity.
And I hope you'll join us on the next edition of Insights. And remember, you can find all our podcasts at dickgoldbergradio.com or search for Dick Goldberg at iTunes or YouTube.